Hey, Adam, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Thank you for having me, Brian. I am been in sales for quite a long time. I started telesales over the phone back in early 2000s. And so I've pretty much been doing that ever since. And then I've recently, 10 years ago, started doing call coaching with my teammates and my team members, and then got into the player coach role. And so I'm still doing the player coach role to where I'm still doing a little bit of sales with specific accounts and territories, but it's also managing a little team and call coaching and doing what managers do.
Yeah. And why sales?
Uh, couldn't do anything else, Brian.
Yeah, that's pretty much why we do it, isn't it?
I mean,
Harvard wasn't calling.
If they did, they must have the wrong number.
Yeah.
But no, I actually got my degree in teaching. And right before I was going to go into teaching, I got a job opportunity to go out to Colorado and make $34,000 instead of $25,000. And I was like, that sounds good to me. So from then on out, it was pretty much going into sales and being in the business world.
And what was the adjustment like? It's a little bit like teaching, right? There's a lot of communication, a lot of empathy, a lot of trying to understand where the other person's at.
I mean, I didn't ever really teach, so it's hard to compare, but I mean, there is still a lot of, especially now over the last 5 or 6 years, accountability is, becoming more and more in sales. And that was one big thing going into teaching was, we're going to be watching to see what you're doing, and then we're going to make sure that you're doing it right. And, there's a developmentally appropriate way to teach and so forth and so on. So,
and
kind of the same way.
How long did it take before you became either comfortable or good, or did it happen at the same time?
At sales?
Sales, yeah.
Oh gosh.
Is that next year?
Comfortable. I mean, I still, depending on the call and depending on the demo, there's still some butterflies and nerves because you're still, you're selling yourself. And so I'd say I'm comfortable. If someone says that I'm good, then I'll say, okay. But, I've been successful. I've had successful years. So that started, I guess, maybe in a 2006, 2005 range.
Okay.
As far as putting both together.
Yeah. And what helped you along the way? Did you have a good role model and team around you, or was it books or practice or sheer determination?
Well, I had a good manager first starting out with. I guess more mentor who helped coach me and help me on the process to where, I was getting into sales. I was like, oh yeah, this is easy. All you can do is call and talk to people. And then
doesn't work.
Or you talk at them. Yeah. And I when I first started, literally, we were recording calls way back then. I'd get off the phone, run into my manager and say, oh, I just had a great call. And she'd say, all right. She'd ask me this question. I couldn't answer it. She'd ask me this question. I couldn't answer it. She'd ask me this. She goes, go call him back. And I was like, are you serious? She's like, yes, go call him back because you have no idea what's going on. And so that was kind of the way I learned trial by fire. And eventually, when I went in to talk to her and say, hey, I had a good call, I could answer every question that she had to ask me. And so that's when I knew I was starting to understand the process a little better.
Yeah. And was it that they didn't teach you that, or you just got so into the rapport and it was flowing and you just went with it?
I mean, they were teaching, and it was, I guess it's kind of the same idea as it is now. You think
until you don't.
Right. I mean, now I practice Socratic wisdom where I know I don't know anything, and that's better for me because then it's easier to go and learn it. But it's a lot because back then, I mean, sales over the phone, consultative sales over the phone, the long sales process. I mean, I was thinking about, talking to you today. I mean, I was selling software and hardware before we had WebEx and Zoom and everything. So I was selling software and hardware without doing any demos. Yeah. So it was a really intense conversation type of sale. And so, I mean, it was trial by fire. I mean, a lot of, as group sessions, we'd listen to calls and, peer coaching and everything else. And we did sales classes. We had sales coaching and all of that from the outside people back then, which really helped kind of formed my foundation. But it was, it was make a call, go over it, make a call, go over it. And
That's it. Yeah.
that's, that's how I learned.
Yeah.
It was helpful. So that was the start of it.
Well, that was really what helped me, because I was mostly in the field. You prep for the call, you do the call, and then you go get coffee and you tear the call apart.
Yes.
And it was a four-legged sales call almost always, but super technical stuff.
Oh, well, yes. Well, when it got into technical stuff, I mean, I was selling to early childhood and education. So with the IT guys got on, back then I would definitely need some help. But yeah, there's a lot of different prongs in the sales process, and the phone call, 5, 6, 7 phone calls before you really solidify the opportunity back then. And I mean, in a way, it's similar now, except now you get right into the software. Your goal is to get a demo, so you can do the demo and start that process.
Yeah. And was there a particular pivot point or epiphany early in your career that kind of got you from to get exponential type growth?
Yes. There were a couple of the sales courses that we were able to be a part of at where I was, kind of really helped me see that you can't make anybody buy anything. Like sales, everyone thinks the sales is you go in there and, oh yeah, I'll sit down and when I walk out, I'll have a purchase order. And I've still to this day say you can't physically make anyone buy anything, but I really understood it. It's a conversation and it's a relationship. And the oldest adage out in sales is people buy from who they like. And so I tell my guys now that, listen, you want them to call and say, I want to buy from Adam. You don't want them to buy from E-Plan. You want them to buy from Adam. And so if they say that, then you're in pretty good, you're in the driver's seat as far as depending on who you're working against.
And what does that mean to you? Likability?
Likability would be trust. I think, especially in this business, that's the one thing that you get to take with you. The only thing I really think you can take with you when you go from different positions. But it's the trust factor where it's not, you're not selling at me. I'm not talking at you. We're having a conversation. We're building rapport. You ask me questions. I'm able to answer them. I ask you questions. And then it's a relationship that's built over time because, some sales cycles take 12 months, some take 5 years. And that whole time you're working, you're still trying to get the sale and you're still trying to figure out, do we fit? Does it work? I mean, what's the purchasing process like? Oh my gosh, you got to do an RFP now. Oh my, yeah. I mean, it's a relationship that's built over time. And I built a lot of good relationships back in the old days. Cause I mean, I did one job for 16 years. So
wow.
Yeah.
And if you have that likability, I think they are willing to talk with you.
Oh yes.
Or maybe even want to talk with you.
Yes. And when you call and they're in the middle of a meeting, they say, hold on, I got to take this. It's Adam, or it's, you're the only sales guy I talk to. Then, I don't know if they're just saying that, but it makes you feel good.
Well, people think, well, if you have all this value, then they're going to talk to you no matter what. And it's like, yeah, in some cases, but most of the time we don't have that type of value. We have, we have a nice level of value. But if you are able to build rapport with them, care about them, talk about what they care about, they want to talk with you. Yes.
The most important person on the call is them.
Why is that so hard to grasp?
I don't know. It's there's a couple of words that I just try not to get them to use, and I is one of them. But yeah, I mean, when you're on that call is the only thing that matters. Your cell phone rings, you don't look at it. Your other customer calls in, you don't take it. I mean, that used to be one of the things. I'd be on a call and, oh my gosh, that's my big sale calling in. But I would focus on the call I'm on because I wouldn't want somebody to drop a call for me to go talk to someone else. So I'm going to treat them like I want to be treated.
Now that education, that's who you were selling to, education?
Yes, sir.
That's a tough space.
Yeah, it's got its advantages and disadvantages, I think, just like every market.
Well, because it's not well funded typically, right?
I mean, they always have money. They're just not money for you.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah.
Well, and they don't know how to buy, right?
Yeah, it's an, I mean, it's an educational process with the whole, selling and everything else, because I mean, shoot, back then putting computers in early childhood classrooms, we got laughed at. It's
Yeah.
like, we're not going to spend that money to put it in there for a 5-year-old. That's just a waste of time and money. But so there was a lot of educating the customer on what was appropriate and talking to them about advantages and disadvantages and benefits and everything else. So, yeah, I mean, it was a long process, and I mean, not always easy, especially over the phone.
And what kept you at one company for such a long run? I mean, it's a great run.
Thanks. Money.
No, honestly.
Oh, rewind. No. As I got better, I became, a part of the team, and started doing the call coaching, which I really like, teaching and helping others. And just, become, not really moving up, because I didn't go that high, but it was still, I mean, it was, as you put in the time, you want to still reap the benefits. And so if you're going to do it for a while, yeah, it was worth staying.
And why go into leadership? What was the drive there?
It's a little bit of selfishness with not wanting to make phone calls every day anymore.
Yeah.
Thinking that, if I could help other people do it, then I didn't have to sit there and, do the call blocks and dial out, 30, 40, 50 times in the morning, and then rinse and repeat in the afternoon. It was, a little bit of a burnout, but it was also, people would come to me anyway and, say, hey, I'm about to do this call. How would you handle it? And so I got to the point where I enjoyed helping people succeed just as much as I succeeded. So that was kind of a natural step. And we had a void. Our sales leadership just left. And so it was like, well, what are we going to do? Well, we'll help until we hire someone. Well, it was me and another senior rep stepped in and kind of keep the ship together until we found someone else to step in.
Yeah. And what was that like when you first started doing it? Because a lot of people, if it's not done your way, and I think that's the hard part about sales, is you don't want to copy someone's personality.
Right. And I don't think you can. I mean, I think the good thing, one of the good things about being at that company so long, is all of the top salespeople that were there, that I learned from, and that were my equals and peers. We were all different personalities, different styles, different conversations, different questions. But the foundation of how sales is supposed to work was ingrained in all of us. So there's a foundation, but if you talk to all four of us, you'd be like 4 different people.
Yeah.
And the result was the same. So it was, you can't copy anybody. You still have to be you, because if you're not, it comes across. If you're trying to be genuine on the phone and trying to be someone that it comes across, I think.
Definitely. And what did you typically see them doing that you thought you could help them improve on?
Ooh, how much time do we have? I guess I tried to break it down into part versus whole teaching, to where, you have to set the tone of the call, the questions you ask are very important, and the information that you gather is just as important. So my thing that I tried to, I mean, the easiest kind of close-ended versus open-ended questions. I always said there's 6 words that are going to keep you from making money, and there are 6 words that are going to let you make money. And so we would just go over the calls, and I'd say, hey, that's a good question, but just change this one word, and they're going to talk for 35 seconds instead of saying no. And so that gives, for me, getting 30 more seconds was the goal, because 30 more seconds, you're trying to get 30 more seconds, trying to get 30 more seconds. And so that's kind of how we started breaking it down back in the old days, before all the data and all the analytics that we have now, because information gathering was important. And so
what were those 6 words that get us money? We don't need to know the ones that lose us money.
It's the open-ended questions. It's the who and what and why and how and when, because those are questions that hopefully are going to allow people to answer it. Yes. And so, I mean, I hear it all the time. Are you guys looking at new software? Well, of course the answer is going to be no, because you're a salesperson. No one wants to talk to a salesperson. So it's, just little things like that was how we started.
Yeah. How about, like, either not talk or talking too much or talking over somebody or not digging into the answer?
That is sometimes when I think salespeople in general, when we get excited, God, we think we got to say something. We think we got to fill the void, and sometimes I'll still catch myself today trying to say something before they get done talking. So it's all practice. I mean, practice makes permanent. I learned that in basketball camp when I was 12 years old, and so if you keep doing something the wrong way, you're going to become very good at doing it the wrong way. But if it's just it's a fact.
Yeah.
But if it's it's practice. I mean, I still self-evaluate. And if I have a bad call,
Absolutely.
I'll go listen to it right now and be like, God, what were you thinking? Are you when you do the? I mean, I could go on and on. You do the double questions. I don't know why that's a nervous habit that new people do all the time. They ask a question and then cover it up with another question real quick because they're not sure if they asked the right question the first time. So there's lots of different pieces of the call that you can focus on during a call session.
Yeah. And how did you prevent them from taking it as a personal attack and keep it separate from the human? That, okay, that was a good question. How about this one? Why do you think they ran over it, or they just said no?
Well, sometimes it didn't necessarily always stay separate.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not personal.
It's
And
not.
and it's and one way I did that was we do call sessions with peers. So it wasn't just one to one. It was like, let's bring in 2 or 3 team members, let's pick a call, let's listen to it, and let's get the consensus on what would be better or what was good or what was bad, instead of just always one person trying to make the ultimate decision to say this is good and this isn't. If you have 3 or 4 people saying, this would probably been a better way to ask it, then the person you're working with is like, okay, I'll try that.
Yeah. And was there a particular approach that you used with them? Because the fastest way is the direct. Stop doing that. Right?
It's that easy too.
It can be.
It can be.
But then you might not have a coachee for much longer.
Yeah. It was more the direct approach. Sometimes even now I'll use my calls instead of using your calls. I'll use my calls.
Idea. Yeah.
And one of the things I started saying, I think I started call coaching back in 2010. And one of the things, I think I learned this from one of our sales coaches, there's no perfect call. Like, I've never heard one. I've never had one. Because if I do a call and I put it in front of you, Brian, you're probably going to give me a little feedback. Say, oh, you probably could have done this better, or you could have done this better. So that's one thing I tell everyone. So don't think just because we want to tweak it to make it better doesn't mean it wasn't a good call. There's no perfect call. And so if you think you're having perfect calls, then go work for somebody else, because you're not going to be getting better if you're not trying to get better.
Well, somebody had a perfect call, but that's a different issue.
I'd love to hear it.
Well, I think that mindset is the key.
Yeah.
Performance mindset versus knowledge mindset.
Yes.
Like you can get an A on a call. It's like,
you can.
Yeah, you get an A, but the A could not close.
Right.
And you could have a C, but it closed.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a false positive and a false negative sometimes.
And they're still, okay, well, what are we going to do on the next call?
Yeah.
Or if they say that next time, try saying this instead and see what happens. And so it's growing. I mean, it's a process. I've been, calling for a long time, and I still take advice. We still go over calls and we prep for demos and everything else. It's not like it's just automatic.
Well, that's it. After 20 some years, and trust me, after 40 years, it'll be the same thing. That you'll plan out your call, and then afterwards, the best thing is to review it.
Yeah.
Grade yourself. Give yourself a 1 to 10 or an A, B, or C.
Yeah.
And then you'll start to get that improvement.
Yeah. I mean, you have to self-evaluate, and I think you still have to work with other people to get better, because if you're sitting in a silo by yourself trying to get to $1 million or whatever it might be, whatever your goal is, I mean, I look at some of the top golfers in the world still have coaches. John Rahm still has a coach.
They all do.
Kelly Korda still has a coach. It's her dad, but I mean, there's constantly. I mean, look at DeChambeau. He gets done with a round. Back in the day, Tiger Woods get done just scorching the field, and then he'd go to the driving range for 45 minutes afterwards before the next round. So, I mean, if they're doing it, right, I can do it.
And think of how simple that is compared to talking to another human being. It's swinging a club against a ball.
Well, yeah, it's not that simple though. They make it look simple, but just the practice part. Yeah. It's no, I get what you're saying, but it's yes.
This is what people don't understand about sales. There's a human being on the other end, and they're all different.
Yes.
And it's up to us to adapt to them, to try and elicit out of them where they are, what they care about. Is it a match? Where is it on their priority list? What do they care about?
Right. Yes. It's a conversation. Yes.
Right. And people are trying to put it into a database instead of, it takes a real analysis to understand, did something go wrong, or could it have been better? How could it have been better? Not just different, but better.
Yeah. Well, one thing I still do today, to this day, if I don't offer to send you information. So if I'm on new salespeople, old salespeople, they'll say, okay, Brian, why don't I do this? I'll send you some information. You take a look at it. I'll call you back and we'll talk about
the information.
Right. I try to get them to say, listen, you have a conversation. You get them asking you questions. You get them to say, well, that's interesting. Can you send me some information? It's a whole completely different scenario when they get an email from you because they've asked for it. And it's not something you're just kind of jamming down their throat because you couldn't have a conversation with.
Right.
And yeah.
And that talent of starting a conversation with a stranger.
Yes.
It's something we're taught not to do as kids. Right?
Yeah.
No parents, hey, kids, go out there and talk to some strangers. Right?
Well, I mean, the lemonade stand in the driveway and everything else, but yeah, it's not ingrained at the early age.
No, and it's a hard skill to develop. If you were to build the perfect salesperson, what would it look like?
I've seen some of your surveys, like what makes the best salesperson? What's the number one trait of a salesperson? I think because they're all different. I mean, personalities are different. I mean, listening would be up there. I mean, real listening, not just, oh yeah, I heard what they said, but real, I mean, to where you hear the words that are coming out of their mouths. And I guess really thick skin would also be one of them, because it's business, it's not personal. I mean, raise your hand if you've been hung up on. We were taught that as soon as you're hung up on, call them right back. I mean, it's the oldest, I'm sorry, I think we got disconnected. Of course we did. I hung up on you. So, I mean, there's so many different little, I guess, pieces of a salesperson that make them good versus someone else who is different, that are just as good. So I don't know if I can make one.
But you probably interview them, right? You hire them, don't you? No?
We try. Interviewing, I mean, it's the hard process. For me, if I like you, I like them. Let's hire them. And because I'd rather do that than go through 6 months of talking to 16 or 18 different people. It's like, gosh, I like 8 of them, but yeah. So I don't know if it's obviously not the best way, but I'm like, hire them. I like them. I think they want to work. They say they want to make money. Let's find out.
Yeah. And is there any particular questions, or what do you like about them when you like them?
It's just the same thing as sales. It's a connection. It's the ability to ask questions, ability to like be in the conversation, and be part of it instead of when you're talking to someone else, always kind of look off somewhere else and do something. Oh, hold on, do something else.
Their email.
Yeah. It's just like when you're standing in line at the grocery store for 10 minutes longer than you want, and you end up having a conversation with the person behind you about the price of bacon going up. I mean, after 10, you're like, oh, nice guy. But
Yeah.
you know, it's a connection thing for me because I've done interviews, panel interviews, and gone like, oh, I think they'd be great. And everyone else, oh my God, they are perfect. And then a month later, they quit. So it's you know, I've done the Myers-Briggs thing, I've done all of that stuff. And for salespeople, I've just never found a surefire way of saying this person is going to work.
Well, because I've always studied it, from day one, because I wanted to be the best. I was
Right.
money motivated, and I always knew if I was the best, I'd make the most.
Right.
And a headhunter told me that. He goes, all I have to do is beat that guy over there, and I know I'm going to make more money. So he liked to work with people to have friendly competition.
Uh-huh.
And I always would compare in the skills, and it is super hard because everyone's got a different style, top down, bottom up, direct, around the,
Yeah.
a little bit smoother. But a lot of them didn't have the intellectual curiosity to understand how the company works. Some people are just relationship people.
Mm-hmm.
That, if they will talk to me, eventually they'll buy. And some products are like that.
Yes.
Where the client might just be lonely.
Yeah.
I had a
Curiosity is a
manager
big
like
piece.
that.
Yeah.
Anybody who would talk sports with, he would go and meet because he could talk sports all day.
Right.
And I'd
Yeah.
be there. Oh, God, this is not
Are we going
work.
to get to business, please?
Yeah.
Yeah. There are a lot of salespeople out there, and there's a lot of sales coaches out there. And gosh, when you're in a company, whether, back in the old days when we were in the office, I mean, everyone knew how to sell. The marketing person knew how to sell. The IT guy knew how to sell. Everyone had advice for you about what you need to do to increase your sales. But it's the people that are actually doing it that put their, ego on the line and say, no, I'll call them. I'll work on this. I'll hit this $1 million, or I'll get the $2 million, because not everyone's going to sit down and put in the time to dial the phone and to get no 60 times to get one yes and be like, yes. And that, that was your day.
And how did you build up that resilience, that grit to do that? Because I've had, phone focused jobs before, and that's hard.
Yeah.
Especially if you get no inbound.
Yes.
When it's just long pure days. Networking and poking around, and if nobody knows the brand or the problem, you're really starting from scratch.
Yep. Every call, the first 30 seconds. What is that? Yeah.
What is that?
Your name is what? So yeah, I mean, so you got to be prepared. No matter how good you enunciate the name, no one's ever heard of it. So
what kept you focused? Did you have a particular goal? Was it the basketball and the sports training that just said, this is just part of it? This is just, you got to do this.
Well, yeah, that's how I was taught. That's how I saw other people succeed. And really when I started, that was it. I mean, but it became down to, I want to make X.
Okay.
And so if I want to make X, I got to do Y. And so today I was like, why are you in sales? I want to make money. And I'm like, okay, well, what's money? Tell me what you mean money.
What does that mean to you?
Yeah, because some people say, well, I just, I want to. So my focus was, I guess, more the win. I mean, the win is great. And then depending on how much the commission is, it's even better. But it really is the win. I mean, when someone calls and says, Brian, I've decided to go with you, I mean, God, I still get like a rush. Like, yes,
Feels
I did
good.
it.
Feels
Yeah.
really good.
And then the commissions obviously is why you're in sales anyway. And that's the second piece, but it's more it might be the competition. It's more, for me, it's relationship build, because literally after the sale, I can still call you up and we still have conversations about what's going on. And that's when, that's how I do things. And it's relationship.
And when somebody hangs up on you or is rude or unsubscribe, all the the bad stuff that happens, how do you internalize it? What does it mean to you?
Oh, it's not internalized at all. It just means I mean, some of my best friends some of my best friends, like not best, like professional friends, hung up on me the first time I called them because, like you said before, we're interrupting them in the middle of the day. They could be having the worst day ever, and they're like,
know. Right.
yeah. And then, okay, so I don't internalize it. I was like, that was obviously not a good time to call them. So I'm going to wait a week and I'm going to call them an hour later or an hour earlier during the day.
Yeah.
And then they don't even remember hanging up on.
Yeah.
They literally don't know who you are. It's a brand new cold call.
Right. That's it. Everyone thinks they're going to remember a year later. They don't remember a day later. Never mind.
You remember cussing me out? I don't even know your name. You're not that important yet. So I didn't internalize it because it's like hang up, click, hang up, call again, call somebody else.
And I think that should be part of like the first training. Just immediately get a hang up and understand that it means nothing.
It's not personal.
It's not personal. My first hang up, I had to go for a 5-mile run. I was so upset. I was like heartbroken. And I go, this is the life I chose.
Yeah.
How could anybody be so rude?
Yeah. And sometimes, I'm not trying to, it's not your money. Right. And that's why why I didn't do anything wrong, but you can't internalize. If you do, then, that's some people, that's why they don't last.
Yeah.
I have call blocks now because I sitting down for 4 hours and getting no response and doing that because some days are just brutal in phone sales. You got to take a break. It's not going to be rainbows and butterflies every day.
And what did the money mean to you? Was it a house? Was it a family? Was it early retirement? Was it independence?
I got 2 daughters, Brian. I'm gonna be working until I'm 70. It was supporting the family. That was it. I had just like a wife and kids. That seems to be
so consistent like that.
Yeah.
It's not really have to. It's really a want to. But
yes.
But it's a permanent want to.
Yeah. It was a want to. It was a have to. Because I wanted to do what I wanted to provide and everything else. And, having a job was the first step. And then maximizing the opportunity was the second step.
Because I've talked to VPs who won't hire single people because they don't have the burn rate.
Huh. Yeah.
Because they know that they'll take the high, but they won't handle the low.
I guess if your bills are zero, you don't really have to make a whole lot to live and eat oodles and noodles.
Had 5 kids in private school. And you're like, and his manager knew he had
right.
It.
Yeah.
That guy had to make a lot of money and had to work hard.
He's going to be here. It's snowing. It doesn't matter. He'll be here.
Because the family thing, it's a higher value.
Yeah.
Right. As opposed to sports cars or vacations or suits or big dinners.
Well, for me, I told everyone I got my real boss is at home. So if y'all say what you need to say, I got to get back to work. To be honest.
And do you look for those type of things? Those, the big whys that'll drive people through, the Shawshank Redemption. I crawled through a mile of that pipe to get out of here.
I might start now that you brought it up. That's a good point. It's not something that's really come up because, certain questions I guess you can and can't ask nowadays when you're talking to people. I can't say, so how many kids do you have? Because I don't think you can ask
sales. That. Yeah. Because it's, because the first answer is always
money.
I like money. I like people. I like variety. But there's a lot of jobs can get you that.
Yeah. No, if I ask why sales, what's the most important thing, I would like them to say money, because if it's not, then
it won't.
If you're not going to go through what you're about to go through for fun. And no matter how many and no matter how many great and no matter how many good conversations you have, you're not going to sit there and do what needs to be done for you to be successful just to have good conversations, because you can do that. You can be a waiter, you can be a bartender and have great conversations.
Yeah, go on the internet all day and have conversations.
Maybe
not constructive ones, but cool. Hey, Adam, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
I'm on LinkedIn with ePlan Soft right now, and that's my only social media outlet. I'm too old to have Facebook.